This market was about 10 gigawatt hours last year. It is set to increase by more than 10 times in 2030 to reach 115 gigawatt hours.
Every once in a while in this podcast, we obviously focus on energy storage. Mainly, however, that is in the context of mobility, specifically car mobility. So, for example, recently we talked to Gary Bonduelle of Freyr, one of these storage startups that seemingly come out of nowhere and are already planning on production capacities in the range of gigafactories. Then we had the V2G panel in the context of the Smarter Restart, where we also talked about connecting the soon-to-be millions and millions of car batteries on the street via V2G into, for example, a massive virtual buffer battery for the energy grid. So where does that leave traditional storage manufacturers? What kind of markets are they focusing on at the moment? Actually, are there any relevant markets still at the moment left and right of car mobility? And if so, what are the challenges they're facing in realizing that potential? Let's find out in this episode. Welcome to the Smarter podcast, a podcast for and with the creators of the new energy world. A world in which energy will be renewable, decentralized, and digital, bringing together electricity, heat, and mobility. Let us show you how we will get there and who will get us there. Whom better to talk to than somebody representing a company in the storage market that has been around for more than 100 years already. My guest today is Anil Srivastava of Leclanché. Leclanché is a Swiss provider of energy storage solutions that also is opening up a half a gigawatt factory in Yverdon-les-Bains and is focusing on several other innovative storage schemes. So let's find out what their strategy is like and what's the reasoning behind it. Welcome, Anil. Great to have you on the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Anil, where are you actually dialing in from today? I know Leclanché is Swiss-based, so does that mean you're also working from Switzerland at the moment?
Yes, at this time I'm in Switzerland in my office, although we have offices around the world, but today I have pleasure to be in my own office.
Not the worst country to have to work from, so I'm almost jealous. Well, you mentioned that you have offices all around the world, and I think that's a great start for my first question. And that would be, obviously we see a massive ramp up of production capacities in Europe at the moment. How, having your international insight, would you place this in the international context?
First and foremost, we absolutely welcome that. The industry needs scale, and I'm pleased to see that there are a number of announcements done, some in construction, to build large capacity in Europe. So that is a welcome event happening rather than us becoming consumers in Europe, importing batteries from the Far East. How I see is we will do it differently in Europe, hopefully more responsibly, and set an example for the rest of the world. My comment is directed towards overall what we call European Green Deal, climate action, and more particularly, sustainable batteries regulation. It is absolutely critical if we follow what has been put out by European Union Commission in terms of having a sustainable, safe performance of batteries from mining to recycling. That is what our directive covers, so long as that is sincerely implemented, not only with players who are producing in Europe, but also players who would import into Europe, level playing field. As long as that is level playing field, I'm confident Leclanché and other European companies can compete with anyone, however large, big they may be out of the Far East today.
Well, that's quite interesting because it confirms what we already heard in other episodes in this podcast, and that is that you really have to start with the mining, then take into consideration safe usage of the battery, and then the recycling question afterwards, while at the same time being price competitive and have a level playing field on the international stage. So these things considered, do you think then that the massive ramp up in Europe is not only a hype, but really a promising strategy?
I do, if I may, I do. However, let's make sure that we shift out hype to reality. Industrial businesses require a degree of investment in maturing technology, maturing, optimizing production processes. It's not an overnight thing like a software or an app. And people often including, with all due respect to some of the large claims being made in Europe and around the world, that they would change the world tomorrow by launching a product in 2024. With humility, I say it takes a little while for industrialization, achieving all the certifications needed. So people are somewhat, if you like, underestimating the industrial phase which is required for any technology, particularly for batteries.
I guess that's really the interesting tension that we are in at the moment, is on the one hand, we need things to move fast, we need to decarbonize and electrify. On the other hand, as you rightly pointed out, physical products, industrial products, simply have a certain time period they need to be researched, developed, and then produced in massive scales. So what's the best strategy to somehow find the right balance between speed and well executed? What kind of strategy is Leclanché at the moment focusing on as a legacy player? And I guess it's totally fine to call you a legacy player. After all, the company's been around for more than a century already, actually.
We have our age is precisely 112 years. I'll spare you the details of first 100 years or so. The current Leclanché, new Leclanché, is focused on electrification of medium and heavy transport sector. So vehicles in medium and heavy transport sector, trains, locomotives, marine vessels of all kind, commercial vehicles such as bus, trucks, mining vehicles, all of the above. So we focus on medium and heavy transport sector. Our core business is not focused on where most people are in the big announcements on automotive. It's not that we don't have technology for the automotive, but by choice, we focus on these sectors of the market because our value proposition, our lithium cells are designed to optimize total cost of ownership for this sector. Example, our average energy density of cells is in line with the best in the world, albeit from Panasonic, LG Chem, Samsung SDI, CATL, all of them. But we offer double the life cycle. So high energy density, double life cycle equates best in class total cost of ownership for fleet vehicles in medium and heavy transport sector.
That does sound like quite an engineering feat to accomplish. So if you do look at the market left and right of car makers like bus, trucks, or for example ferries, is it mainly a technical challenge to be successful there?
I think the technical challenge is, if I may restate that, more like requirements, if you will. The requirements from left and right of the, if you like, automotive sector, if you focus on fleet electric vehicles, medium and heavy transport sector, the requirement is long life, longer than any offer available in the marketplace today for customers to have optimum total cost of ownership. Average mileage a train locomotive or a bus and trucks do is 6 times to 10 times more than passenger cars. More the mileage equals requirement for longer life cycle batteries. That's where this market is different from the automotive market. Did I answer your question?
Absolutely. And I think what really helped me to understand the difference to markets, automotive and then logistics, for example, is the case I found when researching Leclanché, that you also provide a charging solution for a ferry. And the ferry just runs 20 minutes from shore to shore, and then you have 10 minutes to recharge the battery, and that all day long. So that's really quite a different strain on the battery compared to just the way you use your car once a day and you charge it maybe every second or third day. That's quite challenging for both, I guess, for the onshore solution as well as the battery pack on the ship, right?
Absolutely. I think you are bringing another dimension. If I may, we look at energy storage in mobility sector as a combined approach to what should be the battery on board, if you will, and what is required on the port, on the road for charging those batteries optimally. You can do this in isolation, as most people in the world, unfortunately, are doing today, or you can do this in a coordinated fashion. It is possible to do that in a coordinated fashion if you think about what's going to go on battery on board. So to give the example of the ferry you mentioned, which are in operation or will be in operation on Ontario Lake, Canada, okay, we have designed simultaneously battery on board, and taking those attributes, we have designed a energy storage system which is installed on the port buffering between the grid and the charging speed required. We can charge continuously at 3C. Okay, continuously at 3C, peak 5C. Okay, but no grid can support that often. But energy storage system, the stationary energy storage system, which is on the board, is buffering between capacity available from the grid and capacity needed to fast charge the ferries. We approach our business in an integrated fashion, like the one I just described to you.
What I found quite funny about that ferry example is that you actually have your sort of like your storage ferry to charge then the actual ferry. Is that right? Like because of just the limited space on shore in the harbor area, basically you manufactured special battery packs installed on floating barges. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. If we have designed, announced to the market, patented a unique enclosure design for batteries. We call it Le Bloc. It is 20-foot containers which can be stacked vertically and or horizontally. And it is completely safe. We have an ability to create what we call e-barges, the floating barge you mentioned. So if there is no land, not a problem. We can have floating battery barges which will provide the same function which I described to you, buffering from the grid, fast charging the ferries. That can be done even with a floating e-barge.
So if you look at the two different use cases of the battery storage in the ferry example, on the one hand, you have in my own words as an outsider, the battery storage in a mobile version in the ferry, and then you have it stationary as for the charging infrastructure. So if you look at these two different use cases, where is Leclanché traditionally coming from, and what are you focusing on for the future?
Leclanché has been building batteries for hundreds of years for multiple applications: mobility, stationary, portable, etc. The new Leclanché, built since 2015 when I joined, its pivot is for electrification of medium and heavy transport sector. Our offers in energy storage business, stationary energy storage business, is to complement and complete the green mobility. Our energy storage business is focused on more integration of renewable energy, call it microgrid, solar plus storage, all of the above, enabling fast EV charging, whether it is for cars on the land or ferries in a port. The core offering is about building infrastructure, clean energy infrastructure for mobility. That's what we do in energy storage business, in addition to battery packs, completely owned by Leclanché. The battery pack technology, from cell to module to battery management system, energy management software, all that is in-house owned by us. So battery on board, 100% Leclanché technology. Energy storage required for more renewable energy, faster EV charging, be it ferry or cars, is all in-house.
And if you look at the public debate for the automotive industry, the discussion seems to be already settled. It's going to be electric and that's that. But if you do look at trucks, for example, there's still this big debate whether we should focus on hydrogen, whether really batteries is the thing to do for long-haul trucks. So just the fact that you focus on that with a special business unit, does that mean that the industry behind trucks and buses and ferries also is equally committed to electrification as is the car maker industry?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking. I believe industry is equally, dare I say, even more committed, in terms of making sure that electrification happens to their vehicles. So let me try and answer your question because it has multiple parts to your question. First and foremost, if you look at electrification trends, you have to look at it in two ways in this sector. One is, what is a fleet electric vehicle which operates in a closed loop? Call it a bus, call it a mining equipment, call it a delivery trucks within a city or greater city area. So that electrification is quick, business case is black and white, very compelling business case to do it. And the current battery technologies can absolutely deliver this solution on an economic basis without any subsidies. So first electrification would happen in fleet electric vehicles because business case is easy to compute, is very compelling economically, environmentally. All electric based on batteries. When you talk about long distance, long haul trucking, long haul marine, clearly batteries by themselves are not the solution. We absolutely believe in, and we have delivered projects to demonstrate that the future of long-haul mobility, trucking, marine, all of the above, will be a combination of hydrogen fuel cell, clean engine, if you will, and batteries. Oftentimes, if I'm not speaking too much, oftentimes people think it's one or the other. Science has to prevail. Fuel cells are essentially generators. They are not designed for traction applications, change in profile of current, load, etc. Combining battery for traction purpose, taking care of peaks, regenerative currents, along with fuel cells which provide steady state charging to the battery, steady state runtime, is the best of the two technologies.
I think that's quite interesting because you echo a sentiment that I think most of my guests have for share, and that is that if you operate within the city limits or within a closed loop, it's going to be battery electric, and if you need to cover medium to long distances, it's going to be a mix between battery electric and hydrogen. Whatever of these two scenarios you're focusing, what's quite sure is that you're operating not in a luxury segment, as is, for example, Tesla and Daimler or the Polestar, but you're focusing on a logistics use case. You're dealing with logistics companies. And I guess that's one of the most cost competitive environments there is. I mean, they literally try to squeeze out every last penny when making deals. So how do you cater to that?
First of all, thanks for correctly estimating my customers' purchase department. That's exactly what they do. On a more serious note, it's absolutely true. The customers in these segments are essentially fleet owners, and therefore they focus on total cost of ownership, not only what is the acquisition cost at the upfront capital expenses. And that's where this sector distinguishes itself, has a different requirement from automotive industry. I'll give you concrete examples. A battery in a car would typically need 700 cycles life cycle, 1,000 if you want to be in luxury segment of it. A cycle is a full charge and discharge of a battery. If you put that battery in a train locomotive application, you are going to change that battery in year 1 or year 2. Trains are designed for 30 plus years of life. Therefore, you need batteries not only with high energy density, but combining with long life cycle. Leclanché offers batteries with high energy densities, typically 225 watt hours per kilo, but same as Panasonic, similar range to LG Chem, Samsung SDI, CATL, the big competitors from the Far East. But we offer double the life cycle. Our life cycles are 4,500 cycles at 100% depth of discharge. So you are comparing 1,000 cycle, like for like, a battery in a car to 4,500 cycles batteries in fleet. That's Leclanché's distinguished, differentiated offer in the marketplace. Simply put, the total cost of ownership with Leclanché batteries is 3 times better than any competitive offer available in the marketplace.
Well, I guess your last point brings us back to what we already discussed at the beginning of the episode, and that is one of the factors how European manufacturers could distinguish themselves from manufacturers in the rest of the world is not only environment issues and safety issues, but by really delivering on the performance and the engineering and the quality of the battery packs. So I'm still struggling to put it into perspective to, the huge automotive market. What does the market that you're focusing on with Leclanché look like in comparison or in relation?
We are focused on medium and heavy transport sector. That's vehicles of all kind, train locomotive, marine vessels, specialized trucks, buses, mining vehicles, all of them. This market was about 10 gigawatt hours last year. It is set to increase by more than 10 times in 2030 to reach 115 gigawatt hours, 115 gigawatt hours. Seen from automotive, people would be right to call it niche, but this is large enough market in its own right. Some of the biggest OEMs for trucks, particularly trucks, are in Europe. Daimler Trucks, Volvo, Renault, count them. They are some of the biggest operators in the world. They are European, we are European, and we have working references.
Wow, we're already at the end of our episode here, Anil. So I'll try to do a summary of all the insights and learnings that I took from our conversation. Maybe let's start with what you mentioned at the end. And that is that even smaller in comparison to the automotive market, specifically the market around heavy transport is still growing by the factor of 10, which obviously is enormous as a growth rate. So it makes absolutely sense to focus on it as you are, and specifically with the approach that I understood you have in it, and that is that you do not only zero in on, for example, mobile storage in vehicles or in stationary storage for the charging infrastructure, but you really try to create a thought-through system as such, where all the components fit together perfectly. And that's quite something to achieve. So if I take that strategy that Leclanché is focusing on, I guess the model for European companies could be to really not only deliver on sustainability and safety standards, but to really deliver on the total cost of ownership, because that is what's the most significant factor for customers within the logistics market. And for that, you do need, I think, two factors that you mentioned, that is a highly skilled workforce, and of course the proximity to the vehicle manufacturers. And this is a given in Europe, as you mentioned. So thanks for all these insights, and thanks for having joined us today, Anil.
Thank you for giving the opportunity for us to share our story with you. We hope to continue the dialogue with you.
You can find everything about future-proof solutions for renewable energy storage and innovative battery technologies at EES Europe, Europe's largest and most international exhibition for batteries and energy storage systems. It's taking place from May 11 to May 13, 2022 in Munich. All information can be found online at ees-europe.com.